As people grow older, especially in the final years or months of life, there is often a noticeable shift in their focus toward deeper spiritual matters. This phenomenon, known as increased spiritual sensitivity, can be seen as one of the subtle yet powerful signs that God is drawing someone closer to Himself. It doesn't always manifest in dramatic visions or supernatural events, rather. It often appears quietly, in the small moments of stillness, reflection, and a hunger for connection with the divine. Many elderly individuals begin to exhibit a new awareness of their spiritual condition, becoming more reflective about their life, their beliefs, and their relationship with God. This heightened sensitivity often includes a desire to pray more frequently. For some, prayer becomes less about requesting things and more about communion with God, spending time in His presence, listening, repenting, or giving thanks. Even those who may have been distant from faith earlier in life sometimes find themselves instinctively drawn back to prayer or sacred rituals. It is as though God, in His mercy, gently reminds the soul of eternal things and beckons it to return home. Scripture, hymns, and familiar spiritual songs may become especially meaningful. The elderly might find deep comfort in reading or hearing the Bible, even if they didn't have a habit of doing so before. Verses that speak of peace, forgiveness, eternal rest, or God's unchanging love resonate more deeply. This spiritual awakening is not limited to religious activity. It often includes a profound sense of awe, gratitude, and humility. Many elderly people begin to speak more openly about life's meaning and express wonder at the beauty of nature, the mystery of life, or the goodness they've experienced. These moments of reflection are often accompanied by a yearning to know more about God or to feel His nearness. The desire to understand what comes after death may intensify, and in that search, many find themselves drawn to faith, sometimes with more urgency and sincerity than ever before. Another aspect of increased spiritual sensitivity is an acute awareness of one's moral and emotional state. There may be a stronger conviction about things done wrong in the past, harsh words spoken, opportunities missed, people hurt. This isn't simply guilt, but often a gentle, God-given conviction that leads to confession and healing. Alongside this, there's also often a recognition of God's grace. Elderly individuals may be overwhelmed with gratitude for God's mercy and the blessings they've received throughout their lives. It becomes less about what they did and more about what God has done for them. There's also a noticeable shift from fear of death to a peaceful acceptance of it. This change in perspective is not easily explained by medicine or psychology alone. For believers, it is often a spiritual gift, an awareness that they are being prepared for something beyond this life. They may speak with clarity and conviction about seeing God, reuniting with loved ones, or being free from suffering. The things of the world, possessions, status, achievements, begin to matter less. Instead, love, faith, and reconciliation take center stage. Increased spiritual sensitivity in the elderly is one of the ways God shows His love and care in the final season of life. It's a tender reminder that He is near, that He has not forgotten them, and that He is guiding them gently toward their eternal home. It's not something that always needs to be spoken aloud to be recognized. Often it's sensed in a calm presence, a softened heart, or the quiet tears that fall during a moment of prayer. In these ways, the elderly often become living testimonies of God's grace, showing others how to finish life's race with faith, dignity, and peace. As people approach the latter stages of life, there often emerges a deep and sincere desire for reconciliation, an inner longing to make peace with others, with oneself, and with God. This desire is not simply an emotional response to aging or mortality, but a spiritual prompting that many believe is guided by God's grace. In these final seasons, the heart becomes tender toward things that once may have been ignored or suppressed. The past, with all its beauty and brokenness, begins to come into clearer view, and with it, the relationships that shaped one's life journey. Whether through sudden insight or a gradual awakening, the elderly often feel compelled to restore what has been damaged, to say what was left unsaid, and to seek or offer forgiveness before their time on earth comes to a close. One of the most common expressions of this desire is the need to mend broken relationships with family and loved ones. Old wounds that were buried for years may rise to the surface, not to cause pain, but to invite healing. Individuals may recall arguments that ended in silence, loved ones who drifted away after a conflict, or words spoken in anger that have weighed on their conscience. As death becomes a more present reality, pride tends to loosen its grip, and many find the courage to make a call, write a letter, or simply say, "I'm sorry." In turn, they may also be more open to forgiving others who have wronged them, recognizing that holding on to bitterness only deepens the burden on the soul. This desire for reconciliation is not about settling scores. It is about setting the soul free. In many cases, people may not be able to reconnect directly with those they are estranged from. Some individuals may have passed away, or the opportunity for direct contact may no longer exist. Even in these cases, the longing for peace often persists, and people may turn to prayer, spiritual practices, or moments of reflection to express their sorrow or release others from resentment. This spiritual act of forgiveness, whether given or received, is powerful, and many elderly individuals testify to feeling a sense of lightness or relief afterward. It is as if the soul knows that it cannot carry such weight into eternity, and that reconciliation, even if symbolic, is part of God's preparation for what lies beyond. This longing extends beyond interpersonal relationships. Many elderly individuals also begin to seek reconciliation with their past selves. Regret for missed opportunities, poor decisions, or personal failures may come to the forefront of their thoughts. While this can be painful, it is also an opportunity for grace. God often uses these reflections not to shame but to heal, reminding them that they are more than their mistakes. In this season, many find freedom through honest confession, renewed faith, or simply by embracing the truth that they are still loved and valued despite their flaws. They begin to see themselves the way God sees them, not through the lens of failure, but through the lens of redemption. For those of faith, the most profound form of reconciliation is the one that happens between the individual and God. This desire to be at peace with their Creator often intensifies in the final chapter of life. Some who have walked closely with God their whole lives find comfort in drawing even nearer, while others who have been distant may feel a sudden urgency to return to Him. Whether through prayer, confession, or quiet surrender, many come to experience a profound sense of divine peace. This reconciliation with God brings an unshakable assurance, a rest for the soul that no earthly resolution can fully provide. The desire for reconciliation in the elderly is not a sign of weakness or regret, but a reflection of God's loving work in the human heart. It reveals a divine intention to bring things full circle, to mend what is broken, and to leave this world in peace. It is one of the most beautiful signs of spiritual maturity, and one of the clearest ways God prepares His children for their final journey home. As people grow older and the reality of their mortality becomes more evident, many begin to develop a clearer eternal perspective. This shift in focus is often subtle at first, but grows stronger with time. Where once the primary concerns may have been career, possessions, or social status, the attention gradually turns toward deeper, more lasting matters. Questions about the afterlife, the purpose of existence, and the condition of the soul. This transformation is not merely a natural consequence of aging. Many believe it is a spiritual gift from God, a gentle pulling of the heart and mind toward eternal truths that are often overlooked in the busyness of life. For many elderly individuals, there is a growing awareness that life on earth is temporary. This awareness doesn't necessarily bring fear, it often brings clarity. They begin to view time differently, recognizing how fleeting it is. Events that once seemed so important begin to fade in significance, while things like love, faith, and legacy take on a greater meaning. It's as if God slowly lifts the veil, allowing them to see not just the end of life, but what lies beyond it. This clearer eternal perspective leads many to contemplate heaven, eternity, and the promises of God in a more personal way. Heaven stops being an abstract concept and starts becoming a real, hopeful destination. This perspective also brings a sense of peace. While aging can come with physical decline, pain, or loss, those who are attuned to the eternal begin to rest in the belief that something far better is coming. They may talk more about seeing loved ones who have passed, or about being in the presence of God, free from suffering and sorrow. This isn't wishful thinking. It's often rooted in a deep, settled faith. Many elderly people report a sense of joy and anticipation when they reflect on the next life. Even those who once feared death may find that fear diminishing as eternity becomes clearer and more tangible. A clearer eternal perspective often leads to a desire to live each remaining moment with purpose. Knowing that time is short, the elderly may become more intentional about their words and actions. They may prioritize sharing their faith with grandchildren, making amends with those they've hurt, or encouraging others to seek what truly matters. In this way, their lives become a testimony, not just of years lived, but of wisdom gained. They begin to model what it looks like to live with eternity in view, offering younger generations a glimpse into a life shaped by hope beyond the grave. This shift in perspective also changes how the elderly see suffering. Trials and hardships, while still difficult, are often interpreted through a spiritual lens. Instead of asking, "Why me?" many begin to ask, "What is God teaching me through this?" Or "How can I use this time to grow closer to Him?" They understand that pain is temporary and that every moment, even the painful ones, can be used by God to shape the soul for eternity. This mindset brings strength and endurance, even in the face of great loss or physical decline. In the end, a clearer eternal perspective helps the elderly to face death not as an end but as a doorway. They begin to see it as a transition, a passage from one chapter to the next. This doesn't mean they stop loving life or the people around them. On the contrary, it often deepens their love for both, but it does mean that their hope is no longer rooted in the temporary. Their gaze is lifted, their vision sharpened, and their heart has begun to rest in what is unseen yet promised. It is a quiet, powerful transformation, one that speaks of a soul being gently prepared by God for the eternal home that awaits. In the later stages of life, many elderly individuals begin to speak and act with a kind of clarity and wisdom that seems to transcend their years. This isn't merely the result of accumulated experience or knowledge. Rather, it often carries a weight, a spiritual depth, that suggests something more. What many perceive as prophetic wisdom is often God-given insight, a sense of discernment and perspective that becomes sharper as the end of life draws near. These individuals may not hold any formal spiritual title, but their words and presence carry a sacred tone, as if God is using them as vessels to pass along final truths, encouragement, or warnings to those around them. This prophetic wisdom frequently emerges in conversations with loved ones. An elderly person may suddenly say something profound that speaks directly to a situation in someone else's life, even without fully understanding the details. They may give advice that later proves to be exactly what was needed, or share a story that leaves a lasting impression. These moments are not always dramatic. Often, they come quietly, in the form of simple but deeply meaningful words that settle in the hearts of those who hear them. It's as though God is choosing to speak through someone who is nearing the threshold of eternity, offering guidance to those who remain. Final words, in particular, hold incredible significance. As death approaches, people often reflect deeply and speak with intention. Elderly individuals may offer final blessings, prayers, or reflections that seem to summarize the essence of their life or the message God has placed on their hearts. These words are often remembered long after they are spoken because they carry a sense of divine timing. Whether it is a mother reminding her children to stay faithful, a grandfather urging his family to forgive one another, or a quiet whisper to hold on to God no matter what. Such messages often feel like parting gifts, lessons sealed with the weight of eternity behind them. What's striking is how often these final words include spiritual truths or eternal perspectives. The elderly may speak about heaven with certainty, or talk about seeing Jesus soon, or offer comfort to loved ones by reminding them that death is not the end. These expressions may not always be logical or expected, but they often bring peace and assurance. It's not uncommon for family members to reflect later on how much those final moments taught them, how the words spoken at the end gave them strength for years to come. Prophetic wisdom in the elderly also has the power to bring direction to future generations. Grandparents, parents, or spiritual mentors might leave behind letters, recordings, or even casual conversations that shape the faith or life decisions of their children and grandchildren. Their perspective, shaped by years of walking with God and enduring both joy and sorrow, becomes a spiritual inheritance. In many ways, these are modern-day blessings, similar to those found in the Bible when patriarchs and matriarchs would bless their children before death, speaking promises and truths over their lives. This kind of wisdom doesn't require a stage or a microphone. Often it comes from a quiet place, perhaps a bedside or a quiet living room, but those who hear it recognize that something sacred is happening. God, in His mercy and love, often grants elderly believers the privilege of leaving behind not just memories but spiritual seeds, words that, though spoken in their final days, continue to grow and bear fruit in the lives of those they leave behind. It's one of the most beautiful ways He uses the end of life, not just as a conclusion, but as a final offering, a lasting legacy, and a divine reminder that even in our last moments, we can still speak life, truth, and blessing. As individuals approach the final chapter of life, many begin to exhibit a deep and often unexplainable sense of peace or readiness. This peace is not merely emotional calmness or psychological acceptance of death. It is something far deeper, something that radiates from within. It is often described by loved ones as supernatural, as if the person has touched something eternal and is now resting in the knowledge of what lies ahead. For those of faith, this peace is understood as a gift from God, a divine reassurance that the journey is almost complete and that what awaits is nothing to fear. This kind of peace doesn't necessarily mean the absence of pain, uncertainty, or even sadness. Physical suffering may still be present, and moments of vulnerability still occur. Yet, beneath those surface emotions lies a steady current of calm and unshakable sense that everything is in God's hands. Elderly individuals often begin to express sentiments like, "I'm ready," or "I feel at peace," with a quiet certainty that is both comforting and mysterious. This readiness isn't forced or feigned. It comes from a place of spiritual preparation, a heart that has been gradually letting go of the temporary things of this world. For many, this peace is the result of a long life of walking with God. Years of prayer, trust, and surrender culminate in a final gift, a soul that is no longer afraid of what comes next. They may reflect on their lives, and though not perfect, they recognize God's faithfulness in every season. In this reflection, there is often a sense of closure. The regrets, while still present, lose their sting. The victories are cherished but not clung to. What matters most becomes crystal clear: faith, love, relationships, and the promise of eternal life. And it is this clarity that often leads to peace. There are also instances where this peace comes suddenly, even to those who have struggled with fear or doubt. In the days or weeks leading up to death, something shifts. It may happen in a moment of prayer, after a final conversation with a loved one, or simply in the quiet hours of the night. The person may no longer resist what is coming. Instead, they welcome it, not out of despair, but out of hope. There's a quiet confidence that death is not the end, but a transition into something more beautiful than words can describe. Loved ones often notice this change. A person who is anxious may become calm. Someone who is restless may begin to sleep peacefully. Conversations may turn more reflective, centered on eternal things. Some even begin to withdraw from worldly matters, not in sadness, but as if they are already looking beyond this life. There may be fewer words, but more meaning in every glance, every touch, every prayer whispered under their breath. Their presence becomes peaceful, even sacred, and those around them often feel that they are witnessing something holy. This unexplainable peace or readiness is one of the most powerful signs that God is near in a person's final moments. It is His way of gently assuring the soul that it is safe to let go. It's not something that can be manufactured or fully understood by those on the outside. It must be experienced, and those who witness it often carry the memory with them forever. It becomes a source of comfort, a reminder that death is not to be feared, and that when the time comes, God's presence can surround His children with a peace that passes all understanding. In the end, this peace is a final gift, a quiet, holy affirmation that the journey has been seen, the soul has been known, and the destination is secure. It is God's whisper to the heart saying, "Well done, come home." 1/2. As people near the end of their lives, a noticeable shift often takes place in their priorities and desires. The things that once seemed essential, material possessions, social status, achievements, and the constant striving for more, begin to lose their hold. This process, known as diminishing worldly attachments, is not always deliberate or immediate. Rather, it unfolds slowly and often quietly, as though the soul is gently detaching itself from the temporary in preparation for the eternal. For many elderly individuals, this detachment is not a sign of loss, but of gain. It reflects a growing awareness that life's deepest meaning cannot be found in what one owns or accomplishes, but in the relationships formed, the faith lived, and the love shared. This change can be seen in simple yet profound ways. An elderly person may begin giving away cherished belongings, not because they no longer care, but because they want to pass them on to others who will appreciate them. They may no longer pursue things they once did with intensity, like career goals, financial ambitions, or public recognition. Instead, their focus narrows to what truly matters: spending time with family, making peace with others, and preparing their heart for the life to come. This simplification is often accompanied by a sense of freedom. Letting go of earthly things brings with it a lightness of spirit, as if burdens that were once carried for decades are finally being set down. This process is not always easy. For those who have built their identity around success, control, or possessions, letting go can feel like a kind of death in itself. Yet many discover that in releasing these attachments, they are actually gaining something far more valuable: a sense of clarity, peace, and purpose that was previously clouded by distraction. As the temporal fades, the eternal becomes clearer. The soul begins to crave less of the world and more of God, more of love, more of presence. Elderly individuals often find themselves lingering longer in prayer, cherishing silence, or reflecting on memories with gratitude rather than regret. There's also a growing awareness that nothing material can be taken into the next life. This realization changes how people view what they own. The things that once held sentimental or monetary value begin to look different in the light of eternity. There is a humility that emerges, an understanding that all of life is a gift, and nothing truly belongs to us. Some begin to express this shift by choosing simplicity in their final days, requesting modest funerals, or asking for donations to be made to causes they care about instead of spending on extravagance. These choices speak volumes, revealing a heart that is more concerned with eternal impact than earthly impressions. Diminishing worldly attachments also create space for reconciliation and healing. As distractions fade, people often turn their attention to relationships that were once strained or neglected. They may reach out to someone they haven't spoken to in years, apologize for past mistakes, or express love that was never verbalized. The desire to get things right before leaving this world is strong, not out of fear, but out of love. There is a longing to leave behind peace, not just possessions. For those walking closely with God, this release from worldly attachments is often accompanied by a growing intimacy with Him. The heart begins to long for His presence more than any earthly comfort. Scripture becomes sweeter, prayer becomes more constant, and thoughts of heaven more comforting. The soul begins to prepare itself not with anxiety, but with hope. In the end, the diminishing of worldly attachments is not a sign of weakness or resignation. It is one of the clearest signs that a person is being prepared for eternity. It is the soul's way of saying, I am ready to go home.